This is the mystery of Pergamon, or the altar of Pergamon. Now, let me just set the stage, and there's so much, I'll just touch on some things before we move forward. First of all, this is kind of like an Indiana Jones thing, but it's real. That's the thing. It's, you have the Ark of the Covenant, and then this is real, and yet it's affected history. You know how the Nazis get the Ark. Well, this is a real thing from ancient times, but it's not a holy thing. It's an unholy thing linked to the enemy, but you see how real the enemy is and how real what the Bible is. What it says. The Bible speaks of something called, it says in Revelation, Pergamon, to the church of Pergamon, it says the throne of Satan, where Satan dwells, the throne of Satan. Why? Pergamon was a pagan place, and when you got, it was the center of paganism. When you went to the mountain of Pergamon, you had all these pagan things, and the key thing they had was the altar of Pergamon. The altar of Pergamon is an altar to the god Zeus, the head of the gods. Has all these gods depicted around it. Was one of the wonders of the ancient world, and this crowned everything. This was the epitome of paganism. And the interesting thing is, at the time when this was built, something was happening in Israel. In Israel, it was the same time when the enemy tried to destroy the biblical faith. He warred against Israel, tried to wipe it out. That's Hanukkah. He brought this guy Antiochus, who's a foreshadow of the Antichrist in the end, who says basically that he's God. No more Bible. Burn the scrolls. Anybody who obeys God is going to be killed. If you don't worship the gods, you're going to be killed. And so he tries to destroy the faith. It looks like he did, except God raises up the Maccabees, and that preserved, because of Hanukkah, we've got Christmas, if that didn't happen. So the other thing is that Antiochus sets up an altar on Jerusalem, on the Holy Mount, on the temple. And that altar, it says it was an abomination. It was the abomination desolation. That's where you get that which is going to happen again in Jerusalem. The end times, it says the Antichrist will set up the abomination, desolation on the temple. Yeah. Well, that comes from there. So this is a war against, this is Satan trying to defile everything, and then you have God. So what happens is the people of God win that war. They remove the abomination, remove the altar. What was the abomination? It was an altar of Zeus. So here they take it out, but now in Pergamon, the enemy sets up a giant altar of Zeus, abomination, which is the altar of Pergamon. And the Bible calls it the throne of Satan. So here you got that. Now what happens to it? As the gospel spreads to the Roman Empire, eventually people start abandoning all these things. The altar of Pergamon falls into disuse. It falls into ruins. It's gone. The throne of Satan is dormant for about almost 2,000 years. But then what happens? Then in the 19th century, a man starts uncovering the throne of Satan, the altar of Pergamon. And the man starts, it's the same time when Europe is beginning to turn away from Christianity, this throne of Satan comes out into the modern world. And he sends the pieces back to his homeland. In his homeland, they reconstruct the altar of Zeus, the altar of Pergamon, throne of Satan. What was his homeland? His homeland was Germany. So here the throne of Satan is set up in Germany. And in the days ahead, by the way, before I even say that, the same time they unearth the throne of Satan, that same year something comes into the world, which is anti-Semitism. Is born in the same year, the hatred for the Jews, the modern hatred for the Jews, is born the same year the throne of Satan comes out of the ground. So here it is now in Germany, and what happens to Germany, this cultured nation? The nation of Germany is going to become satanic, is going to become possessed. If you talk about possession of a person, this is an entire nation that's going to be possessed. But before that, the enemy, keep something in mind, the enemy is a destroyer. It says in the prophets, it speaks of the enemy, it says, you are the destroyer of you are the destroyer of cities, you make the earth desolate. The enemy wants to destroy desolation. So what happens in Germany? What happens from Germany? Before that even happens, you have a world war that is linked to Germany, the First World War. Millions of people destroyed, killed, devastation. First World War. And the throne of Satan is right there in Berlin. That's where it is. But then what you have after that, as Germany comes out of the war, it starts becoming this satanic influence begins stronger and stronger. The man named Adolf Hitler begins rising to power. The Nazis rise to power. The most satanic thing rise about. The altar of Satan is opened up to the public in 1930 in its new museum, and then that year the Nazis suddenly rise to ascendancy on the political scene, and then within 3-4 years the entire nation is taken over under this satanic darkness of Nazism. So now the Nazis have possession of the throne of Satan, the altar of Satan. I mean, the most evil people, the most evil movement are now joined to this, and Hitler is now in Berlin, as he comes to power, the place of the altar. That's when he comes to power, by him coming to Berlin. And so we won't go into the detail. We went into a lot of things because we're going to move forward to the next phase. But I'll just mention this: even when Hitler was railing, and you see him, railing satanically, he is standing on his platform that he had especially built, which is a recreation of the altar of Pergamon. Oh. It's a throne of Satan. Here Hitler is speaking from the throne of Satan in Nuremberg. God. I mean, that's where it's all happening. And it's there in Nuremberg where he first says the word final solution. And remember, the enemy hates the Jewish people, wants to destroy the Jewish people. There's no accident this is all happening. He wants to wipe them out. So he uses Hitler as this man who's possessed. And then an entire nation that's mesmerized. And we won't go into all the detail except to say just this one thing. The altar of Zeus is an altar of burnt offerings. It's a Greek pagan altar. If you take that into Greek, the word burnt offering is holos kaustos, or Holocaust.
Wow.
And so here Hitler is literally standing on an altar of Holocaust, the ancient throne of Satan, altar of Holocaust, and from that the Holocaust begins. And so Hitler's war is the enemy's war to wipe out the Jewish people. I won't go into, there's so much, and we touched on because we're going to move forward again, but there's so much. This is such a deep mystery here. And the thing is that now moving forward here, the enemy is the destroyer. Now, how many Jewish people were killed in this Holocaust? 6 million. How many people were killed in the world in World War II, the devastation that also came, because the enemy is against all people? 60 million. The Jewish people were a tithe. Yeah. The sacrifices of God were the first fruits, often, and they were the tithe. Oh. So the enemy takes the things of God, the holy things, twists them into something satanic. So here you have now World War II, another second gigantic cataclysm happens again from Berlin. The end of the war, the whole world is converging on Berlin, the place of the altar of Satan. You have the armies of the West, the American Allied Army coming from the West. You have the Red Army coming from the East. And it's like the whole world's being drawn to the city where it all began, the devastation, the place of the throne of Satan. And so there they come. It's all in ruins. The enemy always brings everything to destruction. Even those who serve him end up getting destroyed. Hitler kills himself in a bunker, and it's April 30th when that happens. April 30th is actually a date on the satanic calendar of offering, of sacrifice.
Really?
It's a date. It is one of the key dates on the satanic calendar. April 30th. Hitler doesn't want his body to be taken, so he orders it burnt, the last burnt sacrifice of the war. What happens to the world? What happens is America and Russia are in Berlin. Berlin, the enemy wants destruction, and he wants the world to be destroyed. And he's the god of division. What happens is Berlin is divided in two, and that the division of the entire world is going to begin in the city of the altar of Satan. From that is going to come the Cold War. From that, Berlin is divided, Germany is divided, the world is divided as two warring camps ready for destruction. Let me just fast forward for a second. What we're going to see in this one is that all of us here, our lives were almost destroyed, linked to the altar of Satan. That everyone who's watching this, I tell you, either your life would have been killed, would have been destroyed, or your life never would have happened if the enemy had his way. The enemy is the destroyer. So first you have the entire war. Most of our lives, we grew up, we went in air raid drills, get your bomb shelters, because there was this threat of destruction over the whole world, beginning in Berlin where the altar was. This was the center of the Cold War, the same city where it was. But what happened to that altar? When, the Nazis had it, what happened now? What happened was the altar at the end of the war passed from the Nazis, and went into the hands of the Red Army, the Soviet Union. So you went from Hitler, the Nazism, the worst evil then. Now it goes to the key evil of modern times. They have the throne of Satan. They have the altar. And so, and in fact, that's when the Soviet Union really comes out. That's when you have not just, the Soviet Union, that's when the Soviet Union begins taking over. That's when all of a sudden Eastern Europe is under the iron grip of the Soviet Union. Then the world, and then China becomes, and then one out of every 3 people in the world is under this bondage of the power that has the throne of Satan. And so, what was, in the times of the Bible, or in between the Testaments, you had that throne with Antiochus, when he sat on the Temple Mount, the altar of Zeus, same thing. And what did he do? He banned the word of God. He persecuted God's people. Well, what happened all over the world? What happened through communism, which had the throne? They banned the word of God. They persecuted God's people, threw God's people into prison camps, made it illegal to follow God. Same thing. Who's doing that? Satan's doing that. At the same time, the Soviet Union, what else are they against? They're against Christians. Communism. What else were they against? They were against Jews. They were the chief, if you remember, it's not so long ago, they were the arch enemy of Israel. They tried to destroy Israel. They funded all the terror. They funded every enemy of Israel. They helped start wars to destroy Israel. So who's that? That's Satan. They had the throne of Satan. Not only that, here's something else. In 1948, now the altar is still in Berlin, but it's under the Soviet Union's power. But in 1948, they actually take the altar from East Berlin and bring it to the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union actually has the altar now.
Now?
Well, no. Well, there's more to it.
Oh, my.
There's more to it. Where's that altar?
Yeah.
And so...
I mean, my mind's going crazy because all the players, we've been there and done that, and it sounds a little bit what's going on in America right now. My God,
oh, there's a lot.
What's going on?
When we get to the last part,
yeah,
okay.
My brain's
Yes.
going to explode.
Oh boy. Okay, Rabbi, keep going.
So the year it was in Berlin up till 1948. Then they move it.
Uh-huh.
Well, in 1948, suddenly the world is brought to a brink of potential destruction. It's the Berlin crisis. The Soviet Union cuts off Berlin. There's a whole thing going before America. It lasts till about 1949. Now the altar is in Russia. You don't have any more problems like that in Berlin until they return the altar to Berlin, which I'm going to mention in a moment. What happens, but here's something else about communism. Marx. There's something about Karl Marx. Karl Marx was the son of rabbis. At one point, he considered Christianity, but he rejected Christianity. And he did something. Now listen to what Karl Marx wrote. He wrote kind of a poem. Listen to what he wrote. He said, "A God has snatched from me everything. Nothing but revenge is left to me. I will build my throne high overhead. Cold, tremendous shall its summit be. I will build my throne high." What does God say that the enemy said? He said, "I will ascend into the heaven. I will exalt my throne." That's what it's like Satan is speaking, as he spoke through Hitler, is speaking through Karl Marx. I will build my throne. And then what does he say? He goes on to say in what Marx wrote, "The prince of darkness has sold it to me, this sword. He has sold me a sword. And it beats the time. It gives me the signs. Ever more boldly I play the dance of death." And then in the poem, Marx speaks to humanity. He says, "I have power to crush you. The abyss yawns in darkness. You will sink down, and I will follow, laughing, whispering in your ears, descend. Come with me. I bring the world to ruins." What does the Bible say about Satan? It says, who is this one who destroys cities, brings the world to desolation? So here now is the next move of how the Bible is real, it's serious. When it says something about the devil, it's real. And so here you have that going on. Now, what happens? What happens? One other thing here. There's a boy who is born in Georgia, not our Georgia, but their Georgia. His name is Bessarius Yugashvili. He joins the Bolsheviks. He drops his name, and takes up the name Man of Steel, which is Stalin. Here is now Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin became the dictator, the ruler over this, with the throne of Satan in his country now, in his nation. He is now communism. When when Russia takes this in 1948, now it seals the grip on the Iron Curtain. All these nations are under communism. Stalin is ruling. He is he's killing millions of people, throwing Christians in, hating the Jews, all these things. Here's the thing. The altar of Satan was unearthed in 1878. Joseph Stalin was born in 1878, the same year that the altar of Satan comes back in the world. A little baby is born who's going to be used of Satan. And so now, what happens here now is another thing. We said that the altar of Zeus, or Pergamon, was an altar of burnt offerings. It's the altar of, and the word in Greek is Holocaust. So we've got the Holocaust with Hitler. Now it's in the power of the Soviet Union. And there's one other phrase that's used. When you hear the word Holocaust, there's two applications. One is what happened to the Jewish people under Hitler. The other phrase is nuclear holocaust. So Satan is bent on destruction and burning and fire. What happens? The year after Russia gets the altar, they get the power of nuclear holocaust. It becomes, now the world is armed, and most of us grew up with the threat of nuclear holocaust over. The enemy would want to destroy every person in this room, everybody watching. And so here begins this new age of that. Now what happens is, now in 1958, Russia returns the altar to East Berlin. Still under their control, but now it's back in the city that it was. All of a sudden, there's been no issues, no conflicts in Berlin, but all of a sudden, in 1958, all of a sudden there's another heating up. The world is brought again to another brink, centering on Berlin where the altar is, as Khrushchev demands that America gets out of Berlin. All the Allies get out of Berlin. He gives them 6 months. There's a threat back and forth, and this conflict goes on. You can read it. This is the Second Berlin Crisis. When the altars return, this lasts into Kennedy's reign and Kennedy's presidency. Here's what happened. In the beginning of Kennedy's presidency, 1961, Khrushchev that's when he might have said get out. Now he gives Kennedy 6 months to get out of Berlin. Kennedy responds by activating 150,000 soldiers. And there's for a future conflict in Berlin centered on how the whole world is centering on destruction over where the city of the altar. And now, August 13th, 1961, a barbed wire fence goes in the middle of Berlin, divided up. Then comes the Berlin Wall. Shortly after the wall goes up, there's a standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union on each side of the wall. I mean, they could see each other at different times. Kennedy is told that we don't have the means to defend Berlin except by using nuclear weapons. That's how he's counseled. The general next to him says, listen, you might as well strike because there's going to be atomic war, so you go nuclear. America is preparing for nuclear war. Khrushchev is on the other side. They're preparing for nuclear war. All focusing in the middle of it is the altar that would bring destruction. We almost were destroyed, every one of us, from where that altar was, number one, right there. What happens is, in 1962, next year, which almost destroyed, this is the closest we ever came to destroying the world. Almost wiped out everyone. Here's what happened. In May, Khrushchev approaches Fidel Castro to put missiles on Cuba that could strike America. The plans are approved in July. In August, American intelligence begins picking something up. The missiles arrive in September. In October, America has the first photographs of this, confirmed in mid-October. The chief of staff in America says the only solution is a full-scale invasion of Cuba. October 22nd, Kennedy appears before the entire country. Some here may remember it. And he says that there is nuclear missiles is focused here on America from Cuba, and that any strike in the hemisphere, there will be world war, and we are going to blockade the island of Cuba to not let any Soviet ships coming. China announces they have 650,000 soldiers or Chinese people who are ready to attack in this. You have a world war ready. America puts a blockade. A Soviet ship goes through it. Actually, people don't realize they actually broke through. They continued working on it. Castro urges Khrushchev to send nuclear weapons to America. He's afraid America's going to attack. He says, send nuclear weapons. The world is one button away from nuclear destruction. At the same time, a secret communication goes back and forth between Khrushchev and Kennedy, and even that is on a pit. It can go in any direction, but something happens. It's only at one moment the closest we ever came to destruction comes to an end, and there was a secret in that communication that was never revealed at the time that caused the end of it. And that secret is linked to the ancient mystery of Pergamon. Let me tell you what that is as we bring this home for now. Khrushchev believed that if he put weapons in Cuba facing America, he would have leverage to take Berlin to get America out. So it's again that city of Berlin. He wants that city. That's where the altar is. But secondly, the secret story is this. In April 61, Khrushchev is near the Black Sea. He's near his Secretary of Defense or some official who points over the Black Sea and says, America just placed nuclear missiles on the other side of this sea, focused to Russia, that in a second you could be destroyed. Khrushchev says, well, wonders out loud, what if we put missiles in Cuba facing America to do the same thing? The United States had placed missiles right outside the Soviet Union in 1961. And so here's what happened. So in April, that's when Khrushchev says, let's do it. Then they put the missiles within months, and he makes the decision next thing. So the crux of the secret communication was Khrushchev said to Kennedy, remove those missiles here, and we will remove the missiles there. Kennedy said, we'll do it, but the condition is it will not be made known. We will take it out, but it'll be a secret. So that's what happened. So now here's the thing. The world was almost destroyed by missiles that were never launched, the missiles in this place that were focusing on Russia. Where was it? Where were those missiles that almost destroyed the world? The missiles were in Turkey, the land of the altar of Pergamon, the place where the throne of Satan had always been. The Soviet Union had the altar of Pergamon. This was now Turkey, the place there. Where in Turkey? Turkey has like 80 provinces, 80 states, so it's a lot of small things. They were placed in one small province, the province of Izmir. Izmir is the province of Pergamon.
Oh.
The missiles that almost destroyed the world were in the place of Satan, in the region of Pergamon. But not only that. And here you have, what is the altar about? Holocaust, fire, destruction. Here the missiles are there in the land of that. But here's one more thing. What were those missiles? The missiles that almost caused us to all be gone in the region of Pergamon were called, they had a name on them. They were called the Jupiter missiles. Jupiter is Zeus. Zeus is the god of the altar of Pergamon. It's the altar of Zeus. It's the missiles of Zeus in the place of Zeus, in the place of the altar of Satan. And here, it says in Ephesians 6:16, it says the enemy throws fiery darts, Well, the word in Greek is for dart or flaming is poro, means to ignite fiery. The word for darts is belos, which means, listen, not just darts and arrows. It literally means missile.
Oh my goodness.
So here, flaming missiles from the throne of Satan, the whole world. I mean, and we've just,
you've just touched on this, haven't you?
Yes.
That's why it's
all the details there
on this DVD right here. This is a must get. Yes.
And,
oh my goodness.
It's ultimately, I promise you, as I come back, this is ultimately going to lead us to now, this mystery. But the thing is that you see how real the Bible is. How real, people, when God, when I came to the Lord, and people said, I said, okay, I believe in God, but Satan is real, so real, and you have to ignore history, ignore the Jewish history and all that. It's real. There's a real force. So let me just bring, another time we will bring it forward to what's happening about the end times and this altar. But before that, let me just give a word from this, quick word, and that is this. Number one, what does it tell you? Everything the enemy ever presents you with in your life, every temptation, don't make no mistake about it, it is there to destroy you. Everything, no matter how good it looks, no matter whether it's money, whether it's temptation of sex, temptation of an affair, it is to destroy you. So when you see that temptation, look through it, see it as if a man was standing at your door with a knife and so I want to destroy your family. And so that's the temptation. See it like that. See the enemy who's behind it, who is there with one purpose. You give into that, it's to destroy everything you love, destroy. So treat that sin like the plague. Treat it like Satan, which is what it is. Number one. Number two, the enemy is the destroyer. And so, and he's tried to destroy the Jewish people, tried to destroy the church, tried to destroy every one of us. And so what does that tell you? The enemy tries to destroy the works of God. He hates God. Anything with the image of God, he wants to destroy. So if the enemy is trying to destroy you, he's trying to destroy your life. What does it say about your life? It means your life must be important to God. Your life must be counting something for God. There must be a purpose on your life.
Yes.
There must be a calling on your life.
Yes.
That's why the enemy wants to destroy you. Otherwise, he wouldn't care.
Amen.
It's because of God. Because he fights the purposes of God. So therefore, when he tries to intimidate you, invalidate you, discourage you, it's because God has a purpose on your own life, your existence. God made you for a purpose, for a calling for such a time as this. So wage that war. The Bible says don't abstain from these things which are warring against you. Wage your war against that sin. Wage it with fury against that fear, against that habit, against that entanglement, by the power of faith and the power of love, the power of the God of life, the God of Israel, because when all is said and done, everything the enemy tries to do in the end comes to nothing. When you stand, and everything he's tried to do to destroy the church, the Jewish people, and the world could not do it, because the God of Israel lives. The God of our lives is alive and well.
Amen.
And serve him, and you'll be on the winning side. Stand strong in the power of his might, and you'll win.